before I get into this, I just want to say something. A lot of what I share on this channel comes from things I've had to learn slowly, not because I've mastered them perfectly and not because I always got it right, but because I've lived through enough patterns in myself, in relationships, in my friendships, in my own inner world, to start seeing that life is always showing us something. And I think sometimes the things that hurt us, if we're willing to look at them honestly, become the things that wake us up. So when I speak about friendship in this video, I'm not speaking from a place of bitterness. I'm not speaking as someone who thinks she is above anyone. I'm speaking as someone who has had to look at certain seasons of my life and ask, why did I keep accepting this? Why did this feel normal to me? And what was Allah trying to show me through the people around me? Because I really believe the people in our lives are not random. There's a saying in Turkish, show me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. And most people understand that in the obvious way, like be careful who you spend time with because people will judge you by your circle. And yes, there's truth in that, but I think there's a deeper meaning. Your friends don't just reflect your reputation. Sometimes they reflect your inner state, what you tolerate, what feels familiar, what kind of love you think you deserve, what kind of treatment you have normalized, what version of yourself you are still living from. And when I look back at different seasons of my life, I can see this so clearly. The people around me were never random. When I was in a low state internally, I had people around me who matched that state. When I was very self-critical, I seemed to attract, or maybe accept, people who overlooked me, minimized me, or made me feel like I had to shrink. And it wasn't only in friendships. Even in work environments, whenever I was quietly bullying myself internally, it was like the outside world started reflecting that back to me. People would overlook my talents, they would take me for granted, people would not really see me clearly. And at the time, it is very easy to ask, why are people like this? But eventually, if you're honest, you start asking a deeper question, not in a self-blaming way, but in a truthful way. What was happening inside me that made this treatment feel familiar? Because sometimes the people around us are not only showing us who they are showing us what we have accepted. They are showing us what we have not yet healed. And that is uncomfortable because it is much easier to say they were jealous, they were toxic, they didn't support me. And sometimes that is true. Some people are jealous. Some people are competitive. Some people cannot be happy for you because they are not happy within themselves. But if we stop there, we miss the lesson. Because the deeper question is not only, why did they make me feel small? The deeper question is, why did I keep returning or recreating a place where I had to become smaller to be accepted? That is where the real work begins. Because a friend keeping you small is not always obvious, and it's not always betrayal. It's not always some big dramatic moment. Sometimes it is very quiet. You share something good, and the energy changes. You achieve something, and they become silent. You're excited about a new version of yourself, and they make one little comment that pulls you back into the old one. You begin to grow, and suddenly you feel like you have to explain yourself to everyone, or reduce yourself, or make your blessings sound smaller so that they don't feel uncomfortable. And if you are already someone who doubts yourself, you can spend years explaining this away. You tell yourself, maybe I'm being sensitive, or maybe I'm imagining it. Maybe I shouldn't think like that. But deep down, your body knows, your heart knows. You know when someone is not really celebrating you. You know when someone is more comfortable with your struggle than your growth. And I don't think we need to become paranoid. That's not the point. The point is not to walk around thinking everyone is jealous of you either. That becomes its own sickness. The point is to become honest, to pay attention to who you become around certain people. Do you become anxious? Do you start oversharing? Do you hide your good news? Do you feel the need to prove that you are not a threat? Do you leave feeling less clear than when you arrived? Because that is information. Sometimes Allah shows us the truth through discomfort. And sometimes your heart becomes unsettled around someone before your mind is ready to understand why. And if you ignore it long enough, life usually makes it louder. For me, every real transformation in my life has required some kind of honesty about the people around me. Not drama, not announcing anything, not making myself the victim, just a quiet internal honesty. I had to look at certain connections and realize this friendship is not coming with me. This version of belonging is not coming with me. This person may be familiar, but they are not aligned with where Allah is taking me. And that can be painful, because sometimes we don't keep certain friendships because they are good. We keep them because they are familiar. They give us a place, even if that place is small. Even if that place requires us to betray ourselves a little bit every time we enter it. And that is the part people don't always want to admit. Sometimes the friendship is not surviving because there is so much love there. Sometimes it is surviving because you keep betraying yourself to keep it alive. You keep laughing at things you no longer find funny. You keep sharing parts of yourself with people who have not handled you with care. You keep making yourself easier to digest. You keep acting like you are fine with dynamics that your soul has already outgrown. And then you wonder why you feel so tired after being around them. And sometimes it's not social anxiety. Sometimes it's self-abandonment. Your body is tired because you keep leaving yourself at the door. And I say this with care because I've done it too. I know what it feels like to want better for yourself, but still be emotionally attached to the old environment. You want to change, but you still want to be accepted by the people who benefited from the old version of you. You want confidence, but you stay around people who subtly punish confidence. You want sincerity, but you keep sitting in conversations built on gossip and comparison. You want peace, but you keep giving access to people who disturb your inner state. And then you wonder why you feel stuck. Sometimes you feel stuck because one part of you is praying for a new life and another part of you is still protecting the old one. And that's not something to shame yourself for. It's something to become conscious of, because this is not about thinking you're better than anyone. Spiritual growth can become another ego trap if we are not careful. You can start thinking, I'm evolving and everyone else is beneath me. And that's not purification. That is just ego wearing a cleaner outfit. The real question is not, am I better than these people? The real question is, does this connection help me become more truthful? Does it make me softer in the right ways? Does it make me more honest, more grounded, more connected to Allah? Or does it pull me back into comparison, gossip, insecurity, proving, performing, shrinking? Because not every old friendship is bad. And not every person needs to be cut off dramatically. Sometimes the answer is distance. Sometimes the answer is boundaries. And sometimes the answer is simply no longer giving someone access to the most tender parts of your inner world. You can love people quietly from a place where they can no longer influence the direction of your life. And honestly, that has been one of the biggest lessons for me. Not everyone needs an explanation or a speech. Not every ending needs a confrontation. Sometimes your energy just has to leave the room quietly, with dignity, and with trust. So if you are in that place where certain friendships no longer feel right, but you don't know what comes next, don't rush to fill the space. Let that space teach you. Ask yourself, who do I become around these people? Do I feel more sincere or more performative? Do I feel peaceful or tense? Do I feel safe to grow? Or do I feel like growth has to be hidden? Because friendship is not a small thing. The people close to you shape what feels normal. They shape what you celebrate and what you hide. They shape which parts of you feel safe to exist. So start simply. Privately name what feels wrong, not to build resentment, just to stop gaslighting yourself. Then name what you actually want, not vaguely, be specific. I want friendships where good news is safe, where growth is not threatening, where there is sincerity, where there is softness, where we can speak about life, motherhood, healing, difficulties, discipline, Allah, the soul, without everything becoming shallow or competitive. Name the atmosphere you want around you, because if you don't name it, you may keep accepting whatever is familiar, and then become willing to let the old form of belonging die. Because it is one thing to say, I want better friendships. It is another thing to stop feeding the friendships that keep you small. To stop sharing everything. To stop explaining yourself. To stop showing up in spaces where your spirit feels contracted. Sometimes you have to stop watering what is not growing within you. And then you move like the person who belongs in the life you are asking Allah for. If you want sincere friends, become more sincere. If you want elevated conversations, stop giving so much energy to gossip. If you want peaceful people around you, become more peaceful in the way you speak about others. If you want friends who celebrate you, practice celebrating others without comparison. Because sometimes we ask Allah for new people, but we are still participating in the old pattern. And this is where the work is. It is not only removing people, it is removing the version of you that needed those dynamics. The version that over-explained, or the version that kept giving access to people who had already shown you their capacity. The version that thought loneliness was worse than self-abandonment. Because loneliness is not always the enemy. Sometimes loneliness is just the space between who you were and who you're becoming. And if you can survive that space without running back to what feels familiar, something in you changes. You start to trust yourself. You start to hear your own thoughts again. You start to feel Allah's companionship in a different way. And slowly your life begins to reorganize. Sometimes new people come. Sometimes certain people fall away without drama. Sometimes you simply no longer have the same appetite for old dynamics. And that is a mercy, because real change does not always look like a big announcement. Sometimes it looks like no longer needing what used to feed the wounded part of you, not needing the approval, not needing to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding you, not needing to prove that you are good or worthy. You just become quieter, cleaner, more discerning, more inwardly held. So ask Allah to purify your heart. Ask Him to remove envy from you before you complain about envy in others. Ask Him to make you sincere. Ask Him to bring people who are good for your life and your afterlife. People who remind you of truth. People who can love you without needing to reduce you. People who can celebrate your light because they're not disconnected from their own. And until they come, become that person yourself. Become the friend you're asking for. Become the atmosphere you want to enter. Because sometimes the change you are asking for does not begin with meeting new people. Sometimes it begins with finally becoming unavailable to the old version of belonging. And from there, quietly, your whole life can begin to change. Assalamu alaikum.